Welcome to the Sober Unicorn. We are a gay-hosted, all-inclusive podcast about sobriety and addiction recovery for the LGBT plus community and all of our allies. I am your host, Holden, and thank you for joining us today. Well, hey, it's Holden, and I am an alcoholic. I hope everybody's doing well today. Today, I am joined by Sheba.
Hi.
How are you doing today, Sheba?
I'm great. Thank you so much, Holden, for having me on.
Of course, thank you for joining us. So, why don't you tell everybody like your age, sobriety date, and what your drug of choice was?
Sure. My age, I don't know about that. No, I'm just kidding. Um, I am 41 and I am a sober queer, and I got sober in August 4th, 2007. So I've been sober for quite a while now, and I got sober in Oakland, California, and yeah, doing the deal one day at a time.
That's awesome. I mean, I know a lot of people I speak to are still like in their first year, so it's really good to hear from somebody that has years into sobriety. So I know we of course talked about it beforehand, but as it's you kind of focus on sobriety when it comes to the education portion of like sober sex.
Yeah, I am a sex and intimacy coach. And so one of the things that was really helpful for me was to kind of look at when I got sober, did the steps and, worked with a sponsor. And one of the things that you do when you do a 12-step inventory is you do your sexual inventory.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if you've gotten that far, but
Yes, I almost have 12 right now.
yay! That's a good one. They're all good. But that was really kind of like an awakening for me, doing a sexual inventory, like working on resentments, letting go of, old experiences and resentments around sexuality. And it really helped me to like grow as a sexual being, a sexual sober person. And I remember that when I first got sober, they give you a lot of suggestions. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to do everything, and not everybody does, sobriety the same way or does it perfectly. But for me, I was suggested don't, date or have sex for up to a year. And I took that suggestion. And I mean, like you probably, I had a hookup here and there, but like
Yeah.
I was serious about, recovery. I was serious about getting sober. And it wasn't that I wasn't interested in it, but I really took it very seriously. And so when I got to my year, I was like ready to party. And you definitely like feel that energy like in the rooms, like everybody's like newly sober and they're like, oh my God, like what do I do with these feelings, of like being attracted to somebody and like being in the same room and like can I date, should I date, that don't date a newcomer, don't date as a newcomer. Like there's so many feelings and messaging coming through, and you're just trying to like stay sober. And so once I hit that year, I was like ready to start experimenting and exploring with dating and sex as a sober person. And what I learned was it's completely different. It's a whole new ballpark, and like you are now fully present. I mean, like for me, a majority of all of my sex was, drinking. And I
Mm-hmm.
did, my recovery is from all the things. Like I was just one of those people that whatever you put in front of me, I was like game on, like so, I definitely go to AA, but drugs are a big part of my story. And so like, I was definitely high or under the influence in some way when I was sexually active. And so it was a totally new experience, and it's really exciting to like learn how to be fully present in your body, fully present with another person, like holding all those feelings that come up when you're, being intimate with someone. And so it's just like a whole new experience. And I think that a lot of sober people don't necessarily have tools, you know, like your sponsor is pretty much just there to keep you sober.
Yeah.
Um, and so like you really have to, you know, seek outside help, you know, like talk to a therapist about, you know, any traumas or experiences or anything that comes up, because you don't have alcohol there to, you know, kind of numb out or check out. And so like that's sometimes helpful, is having that other person to guide you. And I definitely am a huge advocate of therapy, and you know, recommend to anyone, sober or not, you know, like to seek outside help if you do have experiences of trauma or sexual assault, or anything that, you know, might be scary or come up around sex. And so I think that there's definitely like a lot of new experiences when you get sober and you start getting in touch with your sexuality. I think for me, like I've always been a queer woman, and always you know, felt very comfortable in my sexuality. But for some people, you know, they might start discovering, you know, sides of their sexuality that they didn't know, or maybe they were keeping down, or, you know, are now able to like get in touch with because they put drugs and alcohol aside. So, like, there's so many things that can come up as you evolve as a sober person.
No, for sure. I know I'm trying to as well take that year of no sex and no dating, but as we all know, this is the 21st century and it's hard to do that. So after, of course, you, as you said, you waited that whole year. So of course, I as well, just like you, my at least for the past 3.5 years, any sexual conquest that I went on was either alcohol or drug related. So I
Hmm.
mean, it's going to be interesting to re-identify myself and rediscovering who I am in a sexual way once I hit that year mark, because it's now a year out of the sexual game. A lot of things can change, and then of course being sober. So I mean, when you first started reintroducing yourself back into the sexual aspect, how did you rediscover who you were?
Well, it's funny because I actually, you know, I had been doing performing arts my whole life. And when I got sober, I hit a year, and this is not everybody's story. Okay. I got sober, made it a year, and then I went to Burning Man. Do you know what that is? Are you on the
Uh,
West Coast or East Coast?
I'm in Texas,
Okay.
so central.
I mean, everybody, I'm sure everybody's heard of it, but
Yes.
I went to Burning Man because the people in my a lot of people in my fellowship were going to camp at Camp Anonymous, which was a sober camp at Burning Man. And so I went to Burning Man. I had like my brain just like blown open, and like all this crazy art, and like everybody's naked. Like I had like a totally different like kind of my 1 year celebration was like me being half naked in the desert. And so like that was like, and I recommend that, you
That
know,
sounds
like
amazing.
if anybody wants to like test their new sober sexuality, just go to Burning Man and get naked in the desert. And it was really spiritual because I went with a bunch of sober people, and I didn't have that experience before. It was my first time ever going. And so I didn't have the, oh, I can't do drugs at Burning Man. It was just like my first experience. And I got to go and like feel the magic of being like in the desert at night with all these crazy art installations and music, and you know, like sexual energy and flirtation and like
Mhm.
openness. And
And it's
so it was
probably
really,
great being able to remember all that the next day too.
I know, yeah. And like just like really random things happen at Burning Man. Like I remember I was walking and I was wearing bunny ears, and someone said, "Bunny, come with us." And they took me, and I was immediately in a bunny parade of like hundreds of other people dressed like bunnies, and we like went in a bunny. So like I just went, I had this like this really crazy art experience, and I came back and I just felt really blown open and was really like explorative. And I started doing performance art. I became a burlesque performer. And so like for me, I had done performance art theater, where called the Vagina Monologues, and so I was definitely like a part of the feminist theater activism, and it was a play around sexuality. So it already for like 10 years been a part of, a therapeutic theatrical production that was around stopping violence against women. So like I had already been like in that sexuality realm, and then coming back, from Burning Man and being a sober person, I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to create, and so I became a performance artist. And burlesque is, if you don't know, it's a sensual art form. And so I was able through my art to get in touch with my sexuality and be sober. So it's like I got to go into bars and clubs and have my art instead of my bottle or my cocktail. And
Yeah, and I
so,
think being a burlesque performer, you have to really know who you are and sexually and your body. And you have to truly be like totally in love with yourself to put yourself on that stage in front
you
of
think,
people.
Holden, you think you do, but let me tell you, like it can just, it's like liquid courage. It was like just a different form of liquid courage, like to get on the stage and want to create art so bad and to like find an outlet for expression in that way. Like I basically learned how to love my body, and I kind of reconnected with my body through doing the performance art. And so it was a really cool experience to like be newly sober and to just need to put you know that energy that I used to put into getting fucked up, and instead I used it to like I did one of my first events was in at a young people's conference, and I performed at all these. I did a couple young people's conferences putting on like variety shows with
Mhm.
drag and burlesque, and one of my first acts was with my actual big book, and it was a piece about my alcoholism. I did two no, three conferences, and I got to create acts around my own alcoholism. I made pink cloud pasties, which was so fun. And I almost got to find healing through my art, and by being sober and by being able to express my art around other sober people was really amazing and healing. And so like that, no, it's not everybody's story, like that was just like how I got to start getting in touch with my body and my sexuality and like channeling that energy into new ways. And then I started to kind of, get more and more curious and start like dipping my toes and, into other little pools. And like we had talked about, how I became a member of the kink community.
Mhm.
And that was, I think like I always identified as a kinky person, but this was totally new to me. And I was introduced to it by another sober woman. And I remember just being really curious. And I think it was really fun to be sober and to be able to explore that side of sexuality as well.
Yeah, I know for me, I'm a very kinky individual as well. And so what I'm looking forward to is being able to experience the same kinks, but in a lot safer manner. Because when you're
Oh, yeah.
inebriated or drug induced, you don't really care. You don't need the safe word. You don't want the safe word. So people can get hurt depending on the kink and fetish that you get into. It could be incredibly dangerous. So it's going to be good to be able to build a trust with somebody, be completely sober in a correct mindset, and introduce some kinks because
Yeah.
I don't
You
have
know,
really anything off limits.
yeah, and what's beautiful is we are everywhere. Like sober people are everywhere. And for me, I grew up in sobriety. Like in San Francisco. And so a very sex positive, progressive, kink friendly place. And they had AA meetings, they had any AA meetings in the kink community. And so you can even find sober kinksters within the kink community
Hmm.
who are also in recovery, and then you can play with other sober people, and that sometimes might even feel safer, or find other people who identify with being in recovery, understanding recovery, speak that language, so that you feel like you are also even in a safer space. But
Hmm.
there's so many beautiful things about kink that I found, and I didn't know about certain things like boundaries or consent or negotiations, and I got to learn those, and it was almost like, to me, it was very a parallel of like
Hmm.
learning. The steps gave me tools how to stay sober one day at a time and to live a sober life, and then the starting to become part of the kink community allowed me to learn all these other ways of being safe and taking care of myself, and asking for what my needs are, having limits and boundaries, and all of that felt really great to like develop a language for sex through the kink community, and knowing what my red light is versus my green light and my yellow light. And, so there was a lot of education that came from that. And now I am a sex and intimacy coach, and I want to hold space for people who are also coming into their sober sexuality, people who are, you know, curious about exploring different kinks, different things. And I lead workshops now where I kind of hold space for people who are curious. And so now, from the gift of my own experience of being, exploring Kinkster, I can give that back to people, and give them suggestions on how they can approach it in a safe manner.
Yeah, and consent, I think sober consent is a true consent, because even one cocktail for some people could alter their mind, or any other narcotic. So, like as you said, kink limits, red light, green light. It is so important to keep that sober mindset and make sure that you're both in it, that both individuals as well. Throughout my step 4 and stuff, you realize that many times we're, as alcoholics, we're selfish people. And so at least when you're going to this kink and this experience, it's for the benefit of both individuals and for a better outcome, rather than you just getting yours or them getting theirs. So
Yeah.
it's consensual on both ends. So you said you lead workshops. I mean, are these like are they webinars? Are they in person?
Yeah, I did a couple through Good Vibrations, which is a toy sex and toy shop in San Francisco, and they provide sex education. And so I've done a couple workshops through them. I'm going to be leading some more through, I work for Body Joy Intimacy School, which is in Austin, Texas,
Oh,
and yeah, and Northern California. And I am going to be doing a workshop in body worship, and so learning how to worship your own body and get in touch with your own body, as well as giving that to your partner, or using that resource, accessing body worship through sex.
so you said that your burlesque days kind of helped you come in. Well, you're still burlesque, but
Yes.
during that process is when you started coming into your own body. Do you think that if you did burlesque while drinking, that you would have developed the same self love?
Whew, I mean, no, I do not think so. Like, I think it was really a beautiful progression. I mean, I definitely was drawn to burlesque because of the same energy that the performing art that I was doing before, the activist theater, had. It was very body positive, very sex positive, and I didn't really go into it to connect with myself and my body. It was kind of a gift of being a part of it. But like, I feel like I'm a evolving being. The more that I stay sober, the more that I, learn about my own sexuality, the deeper of a connection I get, the more that I heal, and the more that I continue to learn new ways of connecting with myself and healing parts of us. Like, that's a big part of the work I do. Is I want to help people who have experiences or trauma or things that are stuck in their body from past experiences, and helping them kind of work through them and pass them so that they can connect deeper into their own body.
And I know as people, as you and I have both worked the 12 steps, that service to others is one of the main reasons that we stay sober. So, is the sex education side the only service that you kind of focus on, or do you also focus on sponsoring others and stuff like that?
Yes, I do sponsor others, and I started a sparkly meeting that is for other artists, so that there's a fun place that artists can kind of have recovery as well as relate on an artist level. And that's really helpful to kind of find the people that, the more that I stay sober, like, I have to find the people that I connect with. There still is that, there's never a bad meeting. You can always go to a meeting and hear, the message. But for me, like, the more I stay sober, the more I need to, find my herd. And so, like, that was a big part of finding other people who relate to being in bars all the time, who relate to being around people who are, a lot of people who are still drinking and on drugs. Um, and that's sometimes hard. And so, like, to be able to relate on that level was really important. And yeah, I think, like, with the work I do as a sex and intimacy coach, it's, a form of service to me. Like, I love holding space for people around healing and around growth. And I do body positivity training, and so teaching others to learn how to love their body and connect with their own. Like, not everybody feels super comfortable in their body, and so finding ways that they can fall in love with their body even more and get more comfortable.
And that is totally something I need to look out for you actually, and probably get in contact again because I know self love and self esteem issues was some of the root of my drinking, at least, and usage. And because I know the community, unfortunately, in general, is a major party community. So
Yeah.
when I had substance, I could pull anybody I wanted. So now that substance is no longer there, it starts going into that kind of own self hatred, self esteem issues, and working the program. I'm now learning that these resentments I built were not their fault. It was just because they brought my own issues with myself to light.
Yeah. And to me, I really don't believe that, you get sober, you do the 12 steps, you're healed, you graduate.
Mhm.
There, that doesn't exist. And so you have to continue to do the work. You have to continue to go to meetings. You have to continue to be available for sponsorship. And then I personally, I identify with other things, other 12-step programs. And so, like, I have my 12 steps for, adult children, ACA, which is Adult Children of Alcoholics, which is kind of like a cousin of Al-Anon,
Mhm, mhm.
and so there's so many different uh, places that you can get recovery and, like, go deeper on what are the things that led you to drink, and kind of get in touch with, other areas that might bring up certain things that led us to drink, like I think that the more work we can do on ourselves, and the more that we uncover, the more that we know ourselves, and we can kind of, be free from those things that led us to
The
the
bottle,
bottom.
yes. So I know
Yeah.
that talking about sex, that at the very end of the meeting, of course, we say the prayer, and then we
Yeah.
say it works if you work it. No, I don't say that. I say it works if you twerk it. Like, which I mean, the hell with it with the burlesque. I mean, you're like you keep working it, being like It's incredible though that you are service to others and helping them get sober, but not stopping there. It's kind of like post care. And it's the fact of, yeah, you may get sober now, but there's still a lot of stuff we have to work on. And
Yeah.
so
What
it's
do they
incredible
say?
that you took that.
The onion, layer after layer after layer, and you don't know, like, there's a lot of layers to that onion. And like for me, like, it helped to find sponsors who accepted that I was in the kink community, accepted that I was a queer woman, accepted that I was polyamorous, accepted that I was a queer performance artist. Like there were so many, things that, like I had to really find someone who understood what, my life was like, and that they accepted it and understood kind of who I was as a sober woman. And
Yeah. So is your sponsor also kind of a part of the queer community?
no, she's just this sweet, cute little old lady, and she's just amazing. I remember when I went and I heard her speak in San Francisco, she had said she was telling stories about all the lines that she ripped, and she was just like this cute little adorable old lady. And she would of course probably kick my ass if she heard me call her an old lady, but she like I related to her. And it's so funny how like we can go into a meeting and we can see someone and go like, oh, I probably have nothing in common with them, and then you hear their story and you're like, oh my god, I partied just like that, like I was just like that. And so I've been working with her for almost 10 years.
That's a long time. I know my sponsor's also straight. And I was like, when it came time for that sexual inventory, I was like, he ain't ready for this. And I actually just told him one more kink that I was into that haven't really told anybody. And he's like, dude, he's like, that's not even that bad. I was like, and this whole time I'm just like internalizing it. And so when I finally laid everything out in step 5, he's like, that's all you got? Here I'm thinking that's the worst thing possible. And just like, whatever. It's weird how we find these similarities between people that in our day-to-day life in alcoholism, we never would have even said hello to them.
Yeah,
We would have been like, bitch, get out my way. I need a drink at the bar.
right.
And it's incredible that the fellowship within the 12 steps really comes together. And as previously stated in another episode, is that the fellowship is like the strongest community out there. And I think the kink community is actually a very strong community as well. So I think combining those two, being sober
Yeah.
and kinky, that's just like you got it down.
Yeah, and like I know that there's space for that. Like there's space for people who are sober and curious and want to, try new things, learn new things, expand their sexuality, work on their identity. And sometimes the rooms don't feel like the place for it,
Mhm.
and like a lot of people can bring anything into the rooms and talk about anything, and that's great. But like, I want to also be someone that can be, helpful and available to someone to hold space for them around sexuality.
Which is very important, especially in this day and age. So I want to thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else that we kind of haven't touched on that you want to share with everybody?
Um, well, I did tell you that I am a queer woman. I am a queer pansexual woman, and I've performed quite a bit at pride parades and pride festivals, and that was one place that also was, it's sometimes very challenging to be a sober person and to celebrate in an environment like you said where there's a lot of partying going on. And so that was definitely helpful for me to find other people that I could be sober with. I just kind of surrounded myself with other people who were like me. And like that's the beauty of like the program is you can find people that relate on all levels. And if you look, I'm sure like if you put anything in the Google machine, like AA and then add anything, like you're gonna find it, or
It comes up,
sober,
yeah.
and like kinky, queer, Christian, like whatever you identify with, like there's sober people within that, you know
Those communities.
those subcultures. Yeah.
Yeah, which is good because I know I am scared to go to Pride for the first time sober.
Yeah,
But
you need to have a spiritual army with you. You got to find your people and like be like, do you want to go with me? And like, let's put on some rainbow tie-dye spandex onesies and let's do this, bitch. Like, I mean, that's kind of like what we had to do is we had to find our tribe, and we had to learn how to party sober. And like, I think I owe it all to one of the people that I first knew was sober, a friend of mine, Janice, and she was in LA. I got sober in LA.
mhm.
And she went to the Young People's Conference in LA. And I went and met her, and I literally probably had like a couple days. And they were at this conference at this hotel, and literally there's just like hundreds of people. It was like Animal House, like people are drinking Red Bulls and they're like smoking cigarettes and they're like, chasing people around trying to get laid. And I was like, oh, you can party sober. And it was really helpful for me to see the young people in recovery, because it showed me that, it's not a glum lot. Like, we don't have to be super boring and sober and miserable. Like, there's so many people that are out there doing things. There's like a whole like community of people that are like planning sober parties and committees and galas and dances and conferences and doing fun things. And for me, like, I took it into my performance art. And so like, I think that's one thing that I can say is like, get sober and then find something hella fun that like makes you feel super excited about life, and like just put all of the, chaotic energy that we put into going to the bars and, being a train wreck, and like make beautiful art and have like amazing fun lives.
Yes, because I mean, if anybody ever walks into a 12-step room, these people, especially, I think it's more so the meeting after the meeting, where you see these individuals laughing, smiling, everything. You can tell that these people find such happiness in being sober. I mean, last night, since I go to a 10 o'clock meeting, it's normally the crowd that's at the bars at night normally. So, of course, we're there. I didn't get home till like 1 in the morning.
Yes.
I was like, people, I gotta go to sleep. And then they're just like music in this. I feel so sorry for the people that live behind the building because they hear us all hours of the night. So what is, if anybody wants to get in contact with you regarding just wanting to touch on anything you talked about today, or even wanting to maybe join one of your classes, how do they get a hold
Yeah,
of you?
definitely. You can follow me. My Instagram handle is at sexposy Sheba. That's SEXPOSI Sheba, SHEBA. You can find me on my website, ShebaQueenOfTheNight.com, and I'm also on Facebook, Sheba QOTN. And if you're interested in workshops, just find me on my website or on my social media, and you can email me at sheba@bodyjoy.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you again for listening to today's episode. Hit that follow button to be notified about new episodes every week. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us on Instagram at The Sober Unicorn Podcast or on our website at thesoberunicornpodcast.com. There you will find our episodes as well as our very own sober-owned shop featuring products from small businesses that are sober-owned. And remember everyone, don't be normal, be a unicorn, but better yet, be a sober unicorn.